Hello, welcome back to another episode of John the PM, where we believe that managing projects is not just a job, but a way of life. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about the network diagram. Yeah, we're going to talk about scheduling. That is all up under the scheduling. As you know, if you've ever dealt with me before, that I believe that scheduling is the hardest part of being a good project manager. Why? Because you got to think big picture and detail all at the same time. The question that normally I ask of my students or my clients, whatever may be the case, is what good does it do to have the bricklayers on site and there are no bricks? What good does it do to have the paint on site and there are no painters? In other words, you got to have the right people with the right tools, with the right equipment at the right time, doing the right task. And that is a lot of detail that is embedded in there. But you also have to be able to see the big picture. So you have to be able to see the trees in the forest and the forest in the trees. That's why I tend to believe that scheduling is probably one of the most challenging technical aspects of managing projects. The other subtle piece is, in particular, in like curriculums and things of that nature, there tends to be a heavy emphasis on formulas, like estimate activity duration using the PERT, standard deviation, triangular distribution, flow calculations, early start, forward start. Early start, early finish, late start, late finish, forward pass, backward pass, and then calculating flow. So there tends to be a lot of math that's involved and a lot of pieces, and sometimes people get so caught up in all the detail that they don't see the big picture. But the other side is absolutely true too. Just because you got the big picture, you also need the details. The part that I want to focus on today is the network diagram. The network diagram tends to have early start, early finish, late start, late finish. So you can also start to associate timings with it. Either way, for this purpose of this exercise is perfectly fine. Now, why the network diagram? Here is one of the key reasons is because it gives you an opportunity before you start the project to try to understand what all the different pieces are to it in real time. A lot of times I'll ask the project manager, hey, just draw up a network diagram, put it up on a whiteboard, for it. And then bring in your key subs, contractors, bring in your key personnel if it's internal, and just kind of ask, does this make sense? And literally kind of walk through it, on that side. Several things could happen. The very first thing is that somebody will say, whoa, you got it perfect. Wow. And if you got that done on the first path, more power to you. Awesome. Sometimes what also happens is that somebody will say, hey, big boss, I know that you have me going in after this person has finished, but really, I don't need anything from that person. Given the time and resources, I can actually just start whenever I want to, on that side. Okay, well, that's news. Awesome. In other words, there is no dependency on a prior activity. And, a lot of times you do find that out. The other thing that also occurs sometimes is that people say, you know what, big boss? Honestly, I can't start until these two people have finished. When they have finished, then I can start. Okay, awesome. Now you begin to understand the relationships. Wait, not just you as the big boss, the project manager, but also the people that when they finish, they realize that now somebody else can start. Okay, so it helps the entire team to get a better feel for where everybody is out in the field, on those areas, and that can be actually be very, very beneficial. So let me put you in a real play here. Let's assume that you just recently took over a systems integration group, and the systems integration group did gray collar type work. Basically installing audio visuals or whatever, technologies into a building. It doesn't matter what the technology is. Before, they just used to just kind of like work through it, and it seemingly did okay, but you're not really sure, what's happening. What's a good exercise is to pull everybody during a staff meeting, into a room or maybe your key people, and just kind of really ask, hey, what actually happens when you're in a room? What actions are you actually waiting on until somebody so that you can either continue work, or maybe somebody thinks that you need something done and maybe you don't. And when you talk it out, you're literally going to draw it out. That drawing will be the network diagram. Now, once you have the network diagram established, in other words, you know what the dependencies are, then you can start putting in your durations. In other words, how long is this activity actually going to take? And, there's different varieties of doing that. I'm not going to cover that, in this session. But at the end of the day, you just need a time estimate for how long the activity will take. Then after that, you can start building up your schedule, because then you can start creating your early starts. When's the earliest I can start? And when's the earliest I can finish based on my duration? And then once you kind of figure out how long everything will take, then you can work your way backwards and calculate your late finish minus your duration will equal your late starts on that side. So essentially what's happening is that you can determine when's the earliest somebody can start, and therefore when's the earliest somebody can finish, and consequently when's the latest somebody can start without impacting the schedule, and when's the latest somebody can finish without impacting the schedule. So just to kind of pull this together, I'm going to run you through a scenario just to illustrate it. Let's assume that you have 5 working days: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. All work must be done by Friday. Awesome. The earliest you can start is Monday. Okay. So, and by the way, the activity is going to take 2 days to do. 2 days to do. Okay. So, what's the earliest that you can start? Hopefully, you're thinking Monday. When's the earliest that I can finish? Monday, Tuesday. So I can finish Tuesday evening. When's the latest I can start and still not impact the schedule? I'm giving you a second here to kind of think that through. Now, hopefully you are thinking of Thursday. Why? Thursday, Friday. I can finish up, everything done by Friday. And what's the latest I can finish without impacting the schedule? Friday. Boom. And that's all we're talking about when we're kind of talking about early start, early finish, late start, late finish. And then, of course, your duration. There's a few more details, but honestly, that's the core context. Again, I would highly encourage you with your teams and your organization to actually sit down during a staff meeting and draw out the activities that are actually going to be occurring while you're at the job site. That will be a work diagram, so you can really detail in what your schedules are going to look like. Okay, hopefully you found that helpful. If you did, please hit the like button or the subscribe. Either one is great, both is even better. It helps us to be of service back to you. And in the meantime, always remember that we believe that managing projects is not just a job, but a way of life.